When Germany invaded Poland, it triggered World War II. When Trump invaded Venezuela, it shattered the international systems of justice and the diplomatic relationships that had lasted since 1945. It's that dramatic, and I'm going to explain to you why that is and what the implications are, and I'm going to give you a number of different perspectives so that you can see this from multiple angles and understand it. It sounds complex, but the way I'm going to tell you, I'm going to make it crystal clear for you. I'm going to really make this simple. I'm going to make something that's incredibly complex simple. And how I'm going to do that is to break it down into pieces. I'm going to give you the big picture first and then show you how all the pieces fit one by one until we get down so we can explain everything that everybody's struggling with and giving you little pieces and saying, oh, the truth about Venezuela is, and it's something that's, no, it's a tiny little piece of what's going on and they're missing 90% of what's happening. Most people, I think, the repercussions of what's going on, it's mind-blowing because it's so wide, because it's so far-reaching. This is a watershed moment as big as Germany invading Poland in 1939. It's as big as that. And there's all sorts of little things in there. I'm going to give you a juicy piece of the puzzle that I haven't heard anybody else say. And if they have, good on you, you beat me to it. This is about purging the military. And why do they want to purge the military? Because this is the road to dictatorship. This is a key pillar in taking the government over. So let's take 3 steps back. Why am I saying this? And I'm going to tell you how that works, all right? Bear with me. But I'm going to put this in the frame it really should be, because Venezuela is just one aspect of a bigger frame. This is how you get out of getting caught up in the, in the tidal pools of the different media. Everybody's spinning up all sorts of different red herrings everywhere. Take 3 steps back and let's look at what this really is. The Trump regime has been pushing for an authoritarian regime for a long time. They are systematically dismantling the democracy. The objective is absolute power. And there are a number of different ways that they're doing this. They're weakening, like they're using the Supreme Court. They hold both houses of the Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives. And just think about, why are they doing all this? And I'll tell you, there is a minority set of groups of people that have their own agendas. The main reason for Venezuela is to advance the authoritarian agenda. It's about authoritarian consolidation. Okay, big word. What it means is they don't want to have a dictatorship, and they're tearing down the things that are in their road. They're removing the obstacles to absolute power. Dismantle democracy. That is their objective. Their objective is to dismantle democracy. They are anti-democratic, and they want to replace democracy with some sort of rule that they control, so a minority can determine everything. It's kind of like, think about becoming something like North Korea, only in its own flavor. North Korea has its own flavor, but it would be a US version. That's what's driving this. And let's have a look. Why do you want to purge the military? And how would you do it? If you look at Project 2025, they have systematically removed people that were supporting the Constitution. So if you look at the FBI and Kash Patel, they've systematically removed all the leadership and replaced them with MAGA people. So so when you hear the deep state, they actually mean the MAGA state. See, they've swapped everything around. There were people that were loyal to the Constitution, and now they're not. They're loyal to MAGA and Donald Trump. They were hand-selected. Russell Vought and the Heritage Foundation systematically vetted thousands of people, and they've systematically put them into positions of authority within the government. And so you talk about the Department of Justice. Talk about, say, immigration judges who are administrative judges that are appointed by the Department of Justice. Why am I telling you this? I'm trying to get a picture to you that this is a very well laid out, highly orchestrated and meticulously laid out plan. A plan to take over the US government and turn it into a dictatorship. It's as simple as that. That is the objective. See everything through that lens, that the elites that rule MAGA, that feed them talking points with a massive machinery. We're talking thousands of people, hundreds of organizations, all dedicated to tearing the democracy down and putting a dictatorship in its place, removing democracy forever. They might keep elections so it looks like a democracy exists. It might be like the Viktor Orban model, where you take all the media over and then what you do is you control the elections in such a way that there's only one result that's going to happen. And that's what happens in Russia. That's what happens in Turkey. That's what happens in Poland. Nothing new. But the US is bigger than them and more complex, and there's a lot more machinery. So it's not so easy to just flip the US and make it instantly a dictatorship. Because, let's face it, how many millions of people on the No Kings Day or the No Kings Rally, how many people came out? I mean, there were millions of people. Was it something like, 7 million? Or it was some huge number. It was a record number of people. But of course, that's just an expression of people objecting. The reality is that this is some kind of civil war, but it's not a traditional one. It's not like the ones where you had the Union and the Confederates and you used muskets and troops, sabres and horses and cannons and cannonballs. This is a technical age. This is a technical civil war. It's a warm civil war because they do have ICE who can be used as a kind of paramilitary. They can be used as a secret police force. They break all the rules, and even though the rules say they're not supposed to do it, like Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, First Amendment, those rights that were perceived before were protected by the Department of Justice, by the FBI, by the courts. But the Department of Justice is now the MAGA Justice Department. The FBI is now the MAGA Bureau of Investigation. And then, of course, there is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court as the end point to all appeals means that they effectively can interpret the Constitution any way they like. And they have, and they will. You have to understand, it is the MAGA Supreme Court now. They have full control over how the Constitution is interpreted. All parts of the government are now under control by MAGA, by the MAGA elite. There's a MAGA elite network. And these are billionaires, many of them. But anyway, I digress. They've captured the Department of Justice. They've captured the FBI. They've captured the Supreme Court. They hold the presidency, and they hold the Senate, and they hold the House of Representatives. And so think about how you would purge the military. Why is that important? The question is, why is the US not completely and totally now a consolidated dictatorship or authoritarian regime, however you want to label it? We can get down into the weeds, but let's just call it a dictatorship because everybody knows what that is. And is there more nuance to this? Yes, a lot. But it's not going to make this story much, it's not going to help us in this part of the story. So if you purged the DOJ, Department of Justice, and the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, if you've done that and you now own those, and you have MAGA loyalists who will do whatever Trump says, irrespective of anything else, they will override the Constitution. The military purge is vital to understanding the next key step towards establishing a dictatorship and dismantling the US Constitution and dismantling the system of democracy forever in the United States. With the military, the key thing to keep in your mind is if they've taken the Department of Justice and they've taken the FBI, they are two pinnacle organizations within the government because they have law enforcement, so they have real physical power. The other is ICE, that's operating like a paramilitary. But if they tried to do a crackdown with just that, And if you watched at Quantico when Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump addressed a room full of about 800 of the most senior officers in the US military, most of the people in that room maintained their countenance, which tended to indicate that they may well be very resistant to the idea of pledging an oath of allegiance to Donald Trump and betraying the US Constitution, because they take that very seriously. And so a key pillar to establishing a dictatorship in the United States is the military is a critical area. And this is why what happened in Venezuela is vital for understanding that this is a move. So it's not just a military operation, which they're calling a police action, into Venezuela. It has massive repercussions. And I'm going to tell you why. Okay, so let's look at the military purge angle. I cannot stress how vital this is. And I don't know why, but people just don't seem to be seeing this. But I do. I do. This is chilling because, as I was explaining before, they've already the Project 2025, they've systematically purged. And what that means is they've replaced people that were loyal to the Constitution with people that are loyal to MAGA and Donald Trump. All right, so this is about the military purge. And the military test that the Venezuela action is a splitting tool. It's very clever. I think, this is my opinion, I think the reason for the Venezuela operation itself to even exist was based on a much bigger plan to dismantle democracy and to bring about some kind of dictatorship or authoritarian regime of some sort. I think that's the objective. That's what the elite people that actually own and control the MAGA people below, the real instrumental players, the most powerful people that drive the whole thing. I think they have hundreds of organizations and probably thousands of people and the best AI you could imagine driving very sophisticated plans, very sophisticated plays, and they've thought through. It's like a chess game. They've thought many moves ahead and they've mapped out what they're going to do. And they do leave some room for play. Like Trump can do some crazy things, but meanwhile, the main grinding machinery of dismantling the democracy piece by piece, the death of 1,000 cuts, it's inexorably moving towards a dictatorship. And Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation, Russell Vogt is one of the key people involved there and is in the government now, OMB. He heads that up. So he's controlling. There are people, they've curated and selected hundreds and hundreds of people. They've vetted them. And so they've placed MAGA loyalists who are loyal to Donald Trump over the Constitution. They have replaced them systematically in the Department of Justice and in the FBI. This is a wholesale takeover. This is the MAGA deep state, or the MAGA state, whatever you want to call it. These are now MAGA organizations, the MAGA DOJ and the MAGA FBI. That is where we are. And the main thing is, and with ICE being used as a kind of like a paramilitary, they're being used like a proto-Gestapo. And I'm going to be covering that, by the way. I've got a paper I wrote on this about the origins of the Gestapo, like when Goering took over the Prussian police force, and that became the prototype for what became the Gestapo. And you might ask, what is the Gestapo? It's a secret police that looks for people that are politically disloyal in authoritarian regimes and dictatorships and things like that. It can be totalitarian. It can be any flavour, though, where you've got a minority that control and you don't have the majority of people who are disenfranchised and don't have much say in what happens. So anyway, so why is this military purge going on? Why is it important? The main reason that ICE isn't cracking down and just arresting all the Democrats, anybody that said anything against, anybody that is non-MAGA, anybody that has either Democrat or independent registrations. There's a big database. We know this with DOJ, and they've fused together databases. So if you have any kind of digital footprint, so your social security number, your taxation, medical records, all sorts of things like that. Anything that has an electronic footprint, they've fused it all together, and they've probably got complete dossiers on you. They've probably even got where you travel to, because they've got cameras that can track your number plate. And they're also, I believe, and I'm not 100% certain of this at the moment, but I believe they can actually track your phone to an extent. So they can really have a very detailed dossier on just about everybody. And it would not surprise me that they have a long list of people that, if they have a crackdown, that they're immediately going to grab. So journalists, so union heads, anybody that's involved, like activists, politicians, but we're talking anybody that's not Republican. And this is both at state and at federal levels, and probably even local too. They threw something like $350 billion towards DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, which houses ICE, and ICE got a big slice of that. And they've got things like, I believe, Palantir and Pegasus and things like that are integrated into this, and they have access to it. So in theory, you could have whole units that are given people's names, addresses, photo, movements, and they've even got real-time tracking. It's like the kill chain that Palantir developed for the military, which is they map out and they have it's like a workflow engine and several things, and analytical tools, all sorts of things, tracking. But they can literally track people from the order, go and acquire this person, to them being acquired, or if it's the military, go wipe out this military unit. It's the kill chain. So it's very sophisticated. Why is this important? If you're going to install a dictatorship with a country as robust and as big and as long-standing a democracy as the United States is, it's not a small thing. And the blowback on you, if you get it wrong, you could end up being executed or at least imprisoned for a long time. Because it is, in terms of the Constitution, it is treason trying to overthrow the democracy, right? Which is what they're trying to do. But they hold all the power. They hold the Department of Justice. They hold the FBI. And they hold the Supreme Court, 6-3, supermajority. Just think about that. What are they missing? They've got ICE. ICE could go and grab everybody, even though it's illegal. They have the ability to do it. So forget what the laws say and all that. All the laws are being thrown out the window. This is what happens. This is what happens in a military takeover. If you go the military path, is power comes from the point of a gun. The problem is, though, that the military is highly resistant. It's very cohesive, and they really don't like outsiders messing with them, because lives are at risk. These people lay down their lives. Some have severe wounds or wounds. They've lost their friends in battle. And many of the generals that have gone up the ranks, they have dedicated their life to this. So they're kind of fanatical about being in the US military. It's like they're devout, because you have to sacrifice so much. I mean, you just think about everything that you sacrifice when you are, in the military, and it's a sacrifice, and it's a life choice that many of these very well educated people who have risen through the ranks to 2-star, 3-star, 4-star level generals, for instance, or admirals, or the equivalents in the Air Force, or whatever, and the Marines have their own command structure. But they all share one thing, is they are the US military, and they're cohesive, and they don't like other people coming in and messing with what they do, because their lives are on the line, and they take their oath to the Constitution seriously. Well, That's what it appears anyway. And I think this has been something that the MAGA people who want a dictatorship, that's the MAGA elite, the billionaires, and the several different ideological groups that are totally committed to dismantling the democracy. They are anti-democracy. Now, I'm going to cover this later about what I'm seeing there, but I think their main objective is to dismantle the US democracy and replace it with some sort of authoritarian regime or some sort of dictatorship. I think that's where they want to go. And a key part of achieving that objective is you need the military to either be neutral or on side and actively supporting you. Because if they're not, and you try and perform some kind of a coup, say Stephen Miller ordered all of the ICE people, go and get every Democrat politician, go and get these journalists. They have that list and they pick up tens of thousands of people in a huge sweep, even using force if they need to, lethal force, because that's what they do. That's what a crackdown would look like. And they would have long lists and they would systematically be grabbing people. That's why all these concentration camps have been built, because they are expecting to fill them with a lot of ordinary people. Anybody that's a dissident, anybody that even questions the idea of some sort of a dictatorship is, to them, the enemy, really. Somebody that could oppose them. And their objective is to remove all opposition and reign supreme. That's the objective. The military is a real threat to that. And those that are dedicated to the Constitution and also refuse to follow illegal orders because they have honour and they believe fanatically, many of them, in these principles, or at least they're highly dedicated. So what the MAGA elite, the extreme right, Trump and some of the cronies, and Hegseth has been put there to help transition this, to purge the military. They even said so at the Quantico meeting, but it looked like at the Quantico meeting that many of the generals, like, they filled a room. I should talk about the Quantico meeting. So Quantico, for those who didn't see that, Hegseth and Trump addressed them. They pulled all of the top brass, that is, all of the military heads from all sorts of different areas from all around the world to be in the one place, which you're not supposed to do because it makes you extremely vulnerable, makes the possibility of somebody taking out all of your top-end military leadership in one hit. You're not supposed to congregate them into one area, but they did. There was something like, I believe, 800, or was it? Yeah, I think there was about 800 that were in the room. But they maintained a countenance. They didn't cheer, they just listened. And the impression that I got was that, yes, there were some people that were a little bit leaning towards MAGA and Trump and whatever, that applauded. I don't know whether they were just staffers or something that were there, but you have a look at the stony faces in that room in the meeting that they had, where they were, Peter Hegseth was talking about, let's do push-ups and things like that. And, we've got to make the same fitness standards for women as men because, well, if you're a woman, too bad if you can't do what the strongest man can do, because we're going to cull you, because even though you've probably got multiple degrees and you've got decades of experience and you're the wisest, most sensible person there, the most qualified, you're a woman, so bye-bye. Because that's, whoa. But that's the meeting where they said, they wanted to use the troops, train them on civilians, on blue cities specifically, because of they were doing the other thing like, the extreme radical left and Antifa, which means anybody that doesn't agree with Trump or even says the prices are rising and I can't pay for things, who complains about anything, is, in their books, the enemy. Anybody that questions authority in a fascist regime or a dictatorship or an authoritarian regime is the enemy. You can't denounce, it's like, think about North Korea. Imagine somebody saying Kim Jong-un is an idiot. Can you imagine? And somebody hears that, you would not last long, and it would not be pleasant, and your family probably wouldn't last long. That's kind of where we're headed if they pull this off, if they establish a dictatorship, it will be like an Americanized version, but with a lot more sophistication. But it'll be essentially, really, when you boil it down, it'll be like North Korea. Welcome to the new, wonderful, bright future. That's what they want. They want to control everything. They want to rule everybody, and they want to tell you what to think. One of the main impediments to them establishing their dictatorship on you, taking absolute control, total power, absolute power. That's the objective. The military stands in the way of them doing that, because if the military sees a crackdown going on and all sorts of terrible things and people being, you can imagine what would happen in a crackdown with people with automatic weapons ordered to go and grab people and people resisting. Can you imagine? Thousands. The military might take umbrage at that and say that's not constitutional. They might actually intervene and try and restore order. That's a possibility. And that's a real risk to them. And let's face it, these people are cowardly. They want to impose from a position of strength. They're not very brave. I mean, if they were, they wouldn't be in the roles they are. They're in the roles that they are because they aren't that kind, it's not their thing. They're about manipulation. They're not about actually, going and duking it out for real, hand to hand. No, that's not what they do. So this was an absolutely, I don't want to sound like I'm admiring this, because I'm not. I don't want to sound like I'm condoning this, because I really am not. I'm totally against this. But from an intellectual point of view, as if you're playing a game of chess or something like that. Because this is a chess for keeps, though. The game of democracy chess and the game of dictatorship chess, because that's what it is. It's a group. It's moves within certain rule sets and things like that. It's a game in a way. You could look at it that way. Well, it's not actually a game. But it helps to think about it that way, to try and become more objective and understand how everything's moving. And once you see that, then everything that's happening will make a lot more sense. But what this does... Okay, let's just go through this. Let me pull this up. Hey, do you mind if I just read from the paper that I've got published? By the way, go to my Substack, pick it up. It's the Dunrow Doctrine. Is this the 1939 Poland moment, is what I've called it. If you go with my channel here, there's a Substack link. Click on that, and then you can look up and you can find that document. It's, how many pages is it now? It changes because I'm updating it. Currently 21 pages. But it's really, it's laid out with a lot of headings and dot points to make it easy. Well, for some people, I suppose, and there is some text, but anyway, it goes into some of the detail. So this section is called Split the Military. Oh, I should tell you what page it's on. Page 3. So I put it in really early because I think this is the big watershed. There's two: the world order getting trashed, and we're going to talk about that, and this military purge mechanism. I think are the two main biggest pieces of what I think the Venezuela operation was all about. So, split the military, a mechanism for purging. I'll try and read this quickly. The rationale is if Trump 2.0 is in fact an authoritarian consolidation aiming to install a dictatorship and overthrow democracy, then a key impediment to that is the potential for the military to adhere to their oaths to the Constitution. If the professional, neutral response to Pete Hegseth's, gee, that's hard to say, and Trump's addresses, let me reread this. If the professional, neutral response that Pete Hegseth and Trump received when they made their addresses to the top military leadership at Quantico last year, It showed to many the potential resistance to authoritarianism. And so this could pose a very real impediment to imposing a dictatorship, considering the military follows the Constitution. So the military operation into Venezuela may well serve more than one purpose. And so the support the troops framing creates a mechanism for identifying and removing constitutional oath-based officers from the military leadership. So I call this a trap. It's just like the trap of, if you're critical of the Venezuelan operation, think about the officers that are being called out to perform what is internationally and constitutionally probably an illegal action, all right? That's what this is the problem with the whole Venezuela operation is, was it legal? And we're going to go into this. If I don't do it in this part, it's certainly on my agenda and I have covered this and I will go into the detail. Stay tuned. But let's focus on this, how the trap functions. So imagine 3 columns. There's really a loyalist. And so there's 3 columns, and we can call column A is the loyalists, column B are the constitutionalists who adhere to their oath to the Constitution, and then there is a confused set that are trying to fit in with both of those and finding how difficult that is. Here's how the trap functions. So column A loyalists, they're going to say things like, mission accomplished, the troops performed brilliantly, America is strong again. And so the path for them is to change their oath to an oath to the president. Just think about that. Hegseth and the whole machinery behind him, they want to separate the military into those 3 groups. Constitutionalists that they want to get rid of and label them woke or whatever it is, or force them to resign, or take them out of command loops and things like that, or, give them special duties on a desk in the middle of some godforsaken place somewhere. And so your column B constitutionalists, they might say, oh, there's a potential that this is illegal. You're a constitutionalist. You're not saying rah-rah MAGA things. Therefore, in their eyes, you're a suspect. This is how they identify people. This may have violated the laws of war. So there's like the rules of engagement and things like that. There is international laws and things like that. There's like the Geneva Convention. All those things you're supposed to be across if you're at that level of the military. See what I'm saying? And then they might say, oh, have we checked this off with Congress? Has Congress been consulted? Anything like that. You're immediately identified as being maintaining your oath primarily to the Constitution. The MAGA people don't want that. The MAGA elitists, the elite MAGA people, they're looking for people that will say, yes, sir, and follow every order, even if it's illegal. And they want the people that will swear an oath of allegiance above and beyond all else to Donald Trump or whoever the president is. You see this distinction. They want MAGA generals, and so they might say, well, the Congress has been bypassed. Ping, you might be then labelled within the MAGA generals will call you a woke general suddenly. That's the way they're going to get rid of you or diminish you or push you aside or just neutralise you somehow, because they want generals that, if they're ordered to, will move troops in and fire on unarmed civilians protesting peacefully. That's the end result of this. That's what they need them to be able to do, is to fire their weapons on civilians using lethal force. I mean, that's the ultimate objective, right? Because if you're going to take things over, you want the military to be prepared to do whatever it takes to secure the dictatorship. So you need loyal officers and loyal troops that will obey your orders and will obey illegal orders within the way the Constitution works. They want people that are they want people that owe their loyalty to Donald Trump or whoever the president is, not the Constitution. Do you see that? That's what they're trying to do. They are trying to systematically purge the military. That is what this is trying to achieve. And then you've got your column C, your confused middle group. I mean, you can see this on the slide, right? And they might say things like, well, they support the troops, but this kind of feels wrong. They're a bit ambivalent. And you're going to find that there are some members of the military are going to be kind of paralyzed, because if they do anything, they don't really want to commit an illegal order, but equally they don't want to be flushed out and identified as a woke general. So they're trying to walk a very thin tightrope. It's a very thin line. Can you imagine what it would be like to be in the upper end of the military at the moment, and this is what you have to deal with, that there is an active purge going on, and that everything you do will be looked through the lens, a political lens. You'll be judged by that. And considering all that you sacrificed to be there, you are now being put, it's hard enough being able to be an elite military force and having whatever the specialities are and the capabilities to command and command well. And a lot of these roles are you need a high degree of education and a lot of knowledge to perform those roles. So you're talking about highly educated people. They might even have multiple degrees for the area they're in, because a lot of the modern military is highly technical. And these people suddenly have to watch their P's and Q's, and they're caught in this crossfire of things, which is, well, they're going to try and follow orders, but if they're illegal, you see what I'm saying? It compromises you, and then you're stuck in these terrible positions where, I mean, I think if you were there, you would be doing all you could to avoid being put in the compromising position where you had to order troops to fire on civilians. Can you imagine? There are many that will refuse to do that. They will refuse an illegal order, as they should. The danger for us is if they get enough MAGA generals, enough MAGA admirals who are prepared to use lethal force against peaceful protesters and people exercising their First Amendment right, then it's game over. And that is why this is a red flag alert.
And I told Pete, we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military. Because we're going into Chicago very soon. That's a big city.
And I don't know why people aren't seeing this. This is a wedge move. This is a purge move. They are systematically trying to eliminate people that would, at minimum, hesitate to follow a direct order to go and eliminate US citizens in cities protesting peacefully, because that's what's at stake here. Power comes from the point of a gun at that level. That's why they haven't taken over yet, because there is enough, I think in their minds, there is a high risk involved that some of the military might take umbrage at the idea of a dictatorship being imposed and trashing the Constitution, because their whole lives they've dedicated to that Constitution, and you're going to trample on it and you're going to tear it to pieces. You see what words fail me. What can I say? This is, if this doesn't put a chill through everybody that's out there, I don't know what does. Just the thought that you, exercising your First Amendment right peacefully, that you might end up being at the wrong end of a MAGA set of troops. No compassion, and they'll see you as the enemy and you will be considered an enemy combatant, and they will use the full array of lethal means to eliminate you and everybody like you, just because you're standing up saying you disagree. That's what a dictatorship is. That's what it is. That's why this is glaring to me. Oh, and they're probably going to spin all sorts of things. I mean, just wait and see. One of the things that I'm also going to cover is how they spin things. And they're very clever at this. They will find... I will suddenly have a raid against me, probably, or anybody that talks about this. You'll have literally thousands of people and the best AI out there concocting responses to really simplify it and, use the MAGA magic, do the Jedi mind trick to people so that they'll say that the earth is flat if they're told that that's what it is. See what I'm saying? And so the upshot is the confused set of generals then is effectively neutralized, which is the main objective. Their main mission is to purge anybody that might oppose the dictatorship being imposed, and to then neutralize the others and to promote up and put into command roles those that are MAGA generals and have proven themselves to be loyal to Trump over the Constitution. That's what's happening. I mean, that's what I'm seeing. That's my best shot estimation. And the terrible situation here is that the military people really can't talk publicly about this. They just can't. Maybe there's somebody that can leak something somewhere. But I mean, I would love to hear what people like General Herdling and some of the other commentators that have a military background. Does this ring true? I mean, I'm not in the military, so I don't know. I'm just analysing what I can see. I'm doing the research and the intelligence that with what I've got, and that's what I'm coming up with. Could this be totally wrong and that they didn't do that and that's not the way this works? Yeah, but it sure looks like it. I mean, yeah, I'd love to hear them say, no, I want to hear Pam Bondi say, oh no, we didn't purge the Department of Justice. I'd love to hear Russell Vogt say, oh, in the Heritage Foundation, no, we didn't say anything in Project 25 about replacing the bureaucracy with loyalists to us, loyalists being people that are loyal to them. I would love to hear Kash Patel say, oh no, we didn't purge the FBI. No. Oh, they probably would say that, but I'd love to see them say, oh no, we didn't replace all of the key roles. Well, of course they did. And like even the JAG Corps, the first thing they did when Hegseth got in there was they removed the JAG Corps and replaced them all, the military judges. It's extraordinary. Can you believe it's 2026? And it's like the whole world's turned inside out and upside down. Because this is one of the main points I'm trying to make. Back in 1939, Germany was the aggressor, was throwing its weight around, had built a military up and was aggressive and was all about expansion, Lebensraum and all that, room to move. And America was one of the heroic countries that came in and liberated Europe, defeated the Japanese at the time. But it's a different world now. Germany seem to be the ones that are more leaning to the democratic side of things. And Japan, okay, maybe the Japanese current prime minister is... currently the Japanese leader definitely leans to the right, but it's kind of a Japanese first government, but it's not like they're going to be aggressive like what happened in 1941. It's the totally different game. All of this has changed. And it's like the world's spun inside out and upside down, and did a weird flip or something because the US is the aggressor. The purge mechanism, anyone in column B, which is the constitutionalists, self-identifies by anyone in the column B, that's the constitutionalists, self-identifies by speaking out, resigning in protest, refusing orders, or filing complaints. They're then forced out as not supporting the troops. And so they make an example of them. And so this creates a chilling effect. So it kind of weeds out the people that support the Constitution, and what they're left with is either ambivalent people or loyalists who are loyal to Trump or the president, whoever that is, and that above the Constitution. That's the aim. And so the precedent that the Venezuelan attack established was those who are willing to invade a sovereign country in questionable terms, because the legality is definitely not clear-cut and certainly looks like there's a breach of international law and the Constitution. And if they're okay with bypassing the Congress, that tells you a lot. And if they're part of extracting the resources from a foreign country, and then the potential for them to deploy domestically, like these rapid reaction forces that have been curated and developed. And we were already seeing things like the DC police force being taken over and run by Trump 2.0. So you could see that this Venezuela operation was really a dress rehearsal, a practice run for continuing operations. And they're talking about Mexico, they're talking about Colombia, they're talking about, just think about it, they're talking about invading other countries. Next up is understanding the terrible impact on the international order and how people all around the world are now terrified, some openly so, and many privately so.